Hello, loyal employee. Great to see you back at the warehouse. Your task for the night is simple. Afton Robotics requested a marionette replacement head. Your deadline is 3 days away. Better get to work. Another day, another shift. I'm back. Crazy, right? That's a rhetorical question, I know it's crazy. Anyways, what's up? In this video, if you, for some reason, didn't read the title, which I doubt, I am making the puppet/marionette mask from FNAF 2. Anyways, yeah, getting right into it, I started out making the base outline for the mask, because structure's needed if I wanted to stay together. So yeah, I just bent some cardboard and started going along with it. Going into this project, I didn't really know what I was doing size-wise, so I just kind of messed around with the length and got something that I ended up liking. So here I'm just adding more base integrity to the mask because I don't really want it falling apart. So as I said, I didn't really have a plan for how big I wanted this mask to be, and depending on how long the piece of the structural base was would determine how big the mask was, which still, it didn't end up being bad, and yeah. Something I think all people who use hot glue despise is the string that, I don't know, gets made if two things touch and then are pulled apart, because it is so annoying to get rid of. Next, I added another piece of curved cardboard just so that when I make the actual front of the mask, it stays strong and doesn't wiggle around. And so, yeah, I added a lot of hot glue because I really didn't want this to fall off and break, and I just glued it on. Now here's the boring part of all of my projects, which is holding down the cardboard so that the hot glue actually sticks and the piece of cardboard doesn't come off, which is so unbearable and tedious. After the hot glue dried, I realized that this was barely going to hold a thing, and so I decided to add another piece of cardboard perpendicular to it. And so after that dried, it was onto the back to add more cardboard because I really wanted this to be strong. So for this piece of cardboard, I just measured and drew Sharpie lines for where to cut, and this ended up not being that accurate, so I don't recommend it. Do your measurements. Night 2, let's go. So this is the actually interesting part where I add the front of the mask and it gets way cooler than just a base. So as per usual, I didn't have a plan for the front of the mask either, so I just started hot gluing and grabbed a big piece of cardboard to glue on. Which, funnily enough, ended up being the top of a pizza box, so what a coincidence. Something really difficult that I've learned to get better at is bending cardboard and getting it to look smooth, which luckily I did for this. It doesn't look perfect, but it's good enough. Now, curving around the corners, I also had no plan for this. What a surprise. And so I just started cutting because if you cut cardboard, then it's easier to bend because it's a smaller piece. So my plan was just to cut it into fourths, and then each section of the mask would just be curved on its own instead of the whole thing at once, which, as you can see, it ended up not being too bad. So after I bent the bottom half, it really got my hopes up because I realized how it could actually look pretty good for cardboard. Also, keep in mind, it took me like 15 minutes per corner just to bend, which was horrid. Anyways, mask done base-wise, now onto the details, which is just the eyes and the mouth. And I decided that I would cut holes for the eyes and mouth because I didn't really want a flat mask, and I thought just a bit more variety would be good. And then, yeah, I made the back, and for the lips, I decided to bring it out, which is realistic, and I ended up really liking how it looked after the base layer of spray paint. Now, masking tape, because I absolutely did not want to get some black paint on the white mask. It would have been horrible to clean up, and I did not want to do that. So, I made sure to mostly cover up the edges because I just wanted it to look clean when it's done. And the eyes were like kind of difficult because all of the small turns, but it wasn't that bad as long as I just added enough tape. So, yeah, after this painful part of the project, which was absolutely worth it in the end, it makes it look way more clean, I started painting it. So my two main priorities for the eyes and mouth were to, 1, not get any black paint on areas I don't want, and 2, to make sure I didn't miss anything in the mouth. So I absolutely took my time painting because I still wanted this to look as good as possible. And while painting, I realized that the front of the mask doesn't actually cover the entire side, and so it leaves this weird little bottom piece, and so I decided to paint with black. So with all the black paint, I put 2 layers on this bottom part and like 4 on the eyes and mouth because I wanted it to be covered. Night 3, let's go. Almost done with the project, and my favorite part, removing the painter's tape because it just shows how clean you painted the mask. And so, yeah, after that, it was just on to painting the details like the tears and the lips. I ended up playing it really risky, and I used some red paint, which I had barely any more of, and I almost ran out because I had to add like 5 layers of paint to make sure it was fully covered. But, it's fine because as long as the mask looks accurate, I'm happy. And this was just like my desperate attempts to cover all the white, which did not work, and I still had to put multiple more coats of paint on. Anyways, now probably the most iconic part is the tears, which I didn't know if I wanted to do it more blue or purple, and I just ended up doing purple. As you can see, I put more painter's tape, which means more smooth lines when I peel it off, as long as I make sure that there's no holes for the paint to get past the tape. I just used whatever purple looked closest to my reference, which was just a picture of the puppet mask, and then I started painting. And since this purple paint was a bit thinner, I had to make sure to add many layers, and it took forever to dry, so it took hours. And while painting, I realized that the brush streaks were very visible, so I made sure to paint downwards so that it wouldn't look off. And this is what the mask looked like before peeling the tape, and after it is so worth it. But also, I almost forgot. The cheeks. She has cheeks that are red like her lips, and I can't believe I almost forgot, but I ended up remembering and adding them before it was too late. And now it's time for the finished mask.